I'm Jim Knight, co-founder of the Instructional Coaching Group, and you're listening to Coaching Conversations, where I talk with coaching experts from around the world so that all of us can learn better ways to make an unmistakably positive impact on the people around us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Webb, and I'm a consultant here at the Instructional Coaching Group. In this episode, I get to do something really special. I'm going to take you through three coaching conversations that have shaped me deeply as an educator and a leader, and I believe have the power to inspire all of us who care about teaching, learning, and the future of our schools. Each episode you'll hear was chosen not only because it carries personal significance to me, but also the ideas inside them speak directly to the hopes, challenges, and questions educators everywhere are wrestling with. One conversation comes from a great thinker who pushes many of us to rethink the purpose of schooling. Another comes from a leader giant whose work reshaped how countless principals approach their daily decisions. And the final conversation brings me back to two people who have profoundly. Mhm. And the final conversation brings me back to two people who profoundly influenced my own coaching journey while offering insights that resonate with leaders across the field. My hope is that as you listen, you'll hear not just my story, but threads that connect to your story too, with curiosity, purpose, agency, and the belief that education can be redesigned to better serve both students and the people who teach and lead them. So let's dive into the first episode. To begin this three-episode journey, I want to start with a conversation that expanded my understanding of what education can be. It comes from Jim's interview with Yang Zhao, a thinker whose ideas about learning, curiosity, and the future of schooling have influenced educators around the world. His work challenged me in all the right ways and continues to shape how I think about teaching and learning today. I first heard Yang Zhao back in 2013 in my own school district, right after I read his book, Catching Up or Leading the Way. He completely challenged how I thought about schooling and what it means to truly cultivate independent thinkers. In this episode, Jim and Yang Zhao dive into big ideas like the science of learning, testing, equity, AI, and why education needs to a very different way forward. I'm excited to share with you a moment that really stuck with me. In this moment, Jim and Yang Zhao shifted into a conversation about artificial intelligence, its potential and its risks, and what it means for the future of schooling. Yang Zhao talked about AI as a way to expand access for disadvantaged learners and about education needing to change if we're going to harness AI's power. He also shared his work with personalized learning, student agency, and the school within a school model. I picked this clip because it feels like a glimpse into the future of schools. Yang Zhao doesn't treat AI as a gimmick or a threat, but as a chance to really rethink what humans are for in education. He talks about AI making it easier for kids to access knowledge, freeing their energy to be more creative and more human, not less. It's a hopeful but not naive conversation. He's clear that AI benefits won't be realized unless schools are willing to change. For me, this clip captures the deep theme of the episode. We can't just improve the past, we need to invent the future of learning. Here's Yang Zhao describing what AI could mean for learners and how we might start designing education for a very different future.
Wow, that's really quite interesting. So let's talk. Yeah, there's like five different questions I want to ask you, but let's build on AI first. You know, what 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 is the potential of AI to help us have uh, more effective, more humane, better education, better learning? And I have a little analogy I'll share with you a little later on. And I've been studying AI pretty much nonstop the last year, so I'm curious to
Sure,
hear
I
your
think
thoughts.
my view is is that learners are in different context. They have different access to resources. You remember, I'm from a very poor village, had no books, no library. So I'm always trying to be aware of poor kids, disadvantaged kids. One of the things AI for them is to have a broader access of knowledge and better than actually search engines. This is more synthesized, easier access. You can explain at different language level. So if you provide that access itself is educationally very valuable. And number two, it might extend our children's knowledge base and actually their information access beyond any subjects and classrooms. Because I'm very worried about each classroom, each teacher still wants to control all the information flow. And that actually limits students. But children could go beyond that. And then the third part is AI is man-made. Humans are in competition, they're creating, but once you access it, you develop a form of partnership with AI. So this is what I call the co-evolution between children or between us, human beings and machines. It's an evolutionary and co-evolutionary partnership. I think right now a lot of schools, for example, are worried. Children are using less energy when they use AI. They cheat. They use AI to do writing. Actually, there's a big study to show, you use AI, use less effort. I said, that's why we want to create this tool. We want to relieve people so they can do other things. They can use the energy to become creative, to become, more human.
Right.
I think AI is making teachers more human. But we teachers sometimes still wants to become the instructional machine. But we don't want to be the machine. We want to become a human teacher. So there are a lot more, we can talk about. There's a collection of my articles recent, about 10 of them, around the issue of assessment of AI, personalization, about policy. My most recent article in the ASCD Educational Leadership, I talk a lot about the power of AI cannot be realized until schools are willing to change.
Hmm. In Topeka, Kansas, we had a Gear Up grant, and Topeka was identified as a community where there was a real problem with the number of kids dropping out of school. So we had Gear Up grant, and we worked with all the middle schools, the high schools. And then in Topeka, in schools around the United States, if kids fail algebra, they have to take algebra again, and they can't graduate until they pass algebra. So then they have these classes called 9R, R standing for repeat. They're taking it over again. While these kids are in a class, they failed algebra last year. They're back in the class. They look up and I failed it last year, and here I am again. Why is this year going to be any different? And they drop out because they can't pass algebra.
Hearing this episode again reminded me why Yang Zhao's work struck me so strongly back in 2013. He doesn't just critique the system. He invites us to imagine something better. Schools that honor every learner's uniqueness, value more than the test scores that we see every day, and to use tools like AI to make education more human, not less. The second clip I chose was from someone who had a profound influence on my development as a school leader, and that's Michael Fullen. Reading Michael's book, The Principal, years ago completely shifted how I understood my work as a school leader. Michael Fullen's description of the 3 key roles of a principal gave me a whole new lens for leadership. Suddenly, the way I approached decisions each day began to change. So getting in to revisit this conversation with Jim and Michael felt a bit like stepping back into the classroom of a mentor or of 2 mentors who greatly shaped who I've become as a leader. In this moment of the conversation, Jim outlines our coaching approach, starting with kids and utilizing teacher expertise supported by the coach rather than a top-down approach. It's thoughtful and honors teachers as professionals. And then Michael says yes. But then he adds an important caution. He says that even the best coaching can lead to teachers getting better at the wrong game. If our only goal is to raise test scores, we end up reinforcing this academic obsession that's already failing so many kids. He reminds us that we need not only power, but purpose. By repurposing education towards developing students who are good in society and good for society. This clip captures the heart of the episode. 2 great thinkers wrestling with how to honor students, empower teachers, and reimagine the purpose of school itself. Let's take a listen to this exchange.
I want to say a bit about the wrong drivers and then go to the 6th edition. But as I look at that wrong drivers article, I think that what I'm seeing there is, um, it's really more about power and control than it is about changes in students guided by teachers. So, well, the way we talk about coaching versus other forms of professional development, often traditional forms of professional development, an expert shows up, tells teachers what to do, says, here's what the research says. Teachers are expected to use it because research says it's good. Teachers don't really see the relevance. They might see the relevance, they might try, but their first times doing it, it's kind of awkward. And the easiest thing to do is just drift back to the way you used to teach. And then sometimes what happens is the system steps up accountability. We're gonna do walkthroughs, make sure you've got your success criteria on the board. It has to be there. And that kind of poisons the culture and people aren't really happy about it. And then eventually something else comes along and you never get to deep levels of change. We start with kids. So we say, let's have the teacher learn how to analyze what's happening with the kids with respect to engagement, well-being, and achievement. Give them tools to analyze. That's the book Data Rules is about that. Once the teacher is looking at what's happening with the kids in partnership with a coach who doesn't silence herself, but also sees the other person, it's the Sengi, it goes back to Sengi, but they engage in a dialogical back and forth conversation. Two professionals engage in a conversation, not someone talking down to the other person. So they set a goal. Then the coach has expertise, but they don't act like an expert. So what they do is they say, well, maybe the person already knows what to do. So they say, you've probably thought a lot about this. What do you think you might do? And if they have a good idea, run with it. But if they're like, I came to you because I don't know what to do, then the coach draws on their expertise and says, well, here's a number of possibilities. And then they help them implement, and then you get into an adaptive because it's not going to work. The first time you try it out, 9 times out of 10, it needs some adaptations or it might be the wrong strategy. Now, taking that and fitting it into a system model is where I see a huge piece we have to look at, because as you put in your wrong drivers, just focusing on the individual isn't enough. It has to be individual in the system. But to me, when I look at those drivers, it's all about you need to learn technology. We're going to have accountability. And really, I think you need to start with kids and work backwards from the kids. And you can do that by having a coach who's also aware of the vision for change within the whole system.
Yeah.
And look at other ways of establishing connections. But anyway, that's what you did to me there with that one. Has got me thinking about, let's start with kids instead of starting with authority, I guess.
That's good. That's good. I want to throw a monkey wrench into that. I want to agree with
knew
you
you would.
first. Agree with you first, and then give you a monkey wrench. The agreement is it is all about power that way, and that the implementers were out of power, and the wrong people were in power, and that's why it didn't work. And what you were able to do was make up for that by shifting the power and having coaching come from the bottom and the middle. My monkey wrench or the teasing part of it is, if you do coaching very well the way you do, and you've described it, that's necessary but not sufficient. And it's necessary. The reason it's not sufficient is that it can lead to people getting better at the wrong game. And the wrong game is academic obsession. The wrong game is literacy, numeracy as exclusive. And and so it's a nuanced point, because it's not just straightforward, flat out the way I said it. But this is why I want to take your word power and say that's exactly right. But I want to add purpose and revisit the purpose of education, which has led us to be less academically obsessed because of the dysfunctions of that, and more around the child with, in terms of well, in our case, the global competencies.
Thanks for listening to this moment between Jim and Michael. I love this conversation because it pulls together two ideas we desperately need, starting with kids and rethinking the deeper purpose of school. For me, listening back reminds me why Michael Fullen's work has shaped me so powerfully as a school leader. He doesn't settle for improvement. He calls for us to transform. The third clip I chose comes from someone close to my heart. I'm revisiting a conversation I got to have with Jim Knight and Susie Vaughn about leadership coaching, two people that have had a profound impact on many, including me. This isn't just another recording for me. Susie was actually my coach when I was a principal. She has shaped me into a more reflective leader who's always looking for ways to improve. And Jim has completely changed my understanding of coaching and to believe in what's possible when we show up with curiosity, empathy, and drive to have an unmistakable positive impact on others. I picked this moment in the episode because many school leaders find themselves here. In this clip, we talk about how principals often feel like firefighters, running from crisis to crisis, putting out flames all day long. Susie and I both reflected on how a coaching stance helps leaders step out of that context or that constant fix it mode. This clip gets to the attention every school leader feels. Top down decision making can feel faster and more efficient until you realize that you're the only one solving everyone's problems. And that is absolutely exhausting. In this part of the conversation, Susie talks about the discipline of not jumping in with answers. And I share how I notice my own habit of loving to solve people's problems. Coaching has shifted that. Instead of being the hero that puts out every fire, I started to see my role as helping others learn how to prevent or handle the fires on their own. What I love about this moment is that it points to sustainability, that coaching isn't just nice, it's how leadership becomes more human, more shared, and actually doable over time. So here's that exchange about moving from firefighting to truly developing the people around us. We're almost firemen every day when we go to school because you never know what fires you're putting out all day long. And if you like being in the fireman role, that's the top down approach. I'm going to put the fire out for you on every single thing that comes your way. But if you don't feel like you have enough time in the day because the fires are always going to be there, what do you need to do next? And it really is, how am I going to shift my conversations away from top down to building capacity so other people could put the fires out or prevent them from happening altogether? Because I think that's the biggest thing. Principals get caught up in that minutia of the day-to-day, like top down. There's an issue here, there's an issue down the hall, and they can't get out of it. And they say, oh, coaching's great, but I don't have time for that right now. And so they're never going to allow themselves that time until they kind of pause and try it out.
And Nancy Klein's book about that is called Time to Think. We have to take time to think. That's the idea. I love what you said. If you want to learn how to be an effective coach, be coached by an effective coach. That might be a big step forward. Okay, one last question. What else would you like to add that we haven't addressed? Something that's on your mind where you say, I think it's important to say this about principals as coaches. Anything you'd like to share? And Susie, you're nodding your head, so I'm going to go with you first.
Okay. Well, what's funny? Somewhere in my notes here, it said, what's the first thing a principal should do? And I said, get a coach. Because again, I think if you have a coach, you learn how to coach and you learn the positive impact of coaching. But I think the thing that is critical is that if you believe in or embracing coaching as a leadership style, I strongly believe that it will make principal leadership more sustainable. Because when you're the firefighter every day, like Mary described, it's easy to get burned out. And it's easy to say, I don't have anybody in my camp. I have to do it all. I'm the first one here, the last one to leave. And so I also believe that there are people that want to step up. There are people who want to take leadership roles. And if a principal towards all of those opportunities, we are keeping other people from learning and growing, and we're not building that pipeline of leadership capacity for the future. So I think when we share leadership, we really are making ourselves more effective and efficient leaders, and we're also building other people's capacity, which is what we want for our students. In our student success, our school success, all of that, but we can't do that alone. And if there's a way to have conversations where people can see that light, I think that will really help them see that there's another way to do things. And there's quite likely a way that's healthier for us and more effective than what we're doing if we're flying solo as leaders.
As we wrap up these 3 moments, I'm struck with how beautifully they speak to the different layers of our work as educators. Yang Zhao invites us to imagine a future where learning is more human, more creative, and more centered around student agency. Michael Fullen challenges us to remember that even the best practices only matter if we're grounded in a deeper, more meaningful purpose for schooling. And my conversation with Jim and Susie brings those big ideas right back into the lived reality of leadership, reminding us that sustainable change happens when we build the capacity of the people around us. Together, these 3 clips formed a clear progression, envisioning what's possible, clarifying what matters, and understanding how we lead towards it. They've shaped me personally, and they speak to the hopes, questions, and commitments that many educators carry into their work each day. So thank you for spending this time with me, reflecting on conversations that continue to inspire and challenge our field. I hope these moments spark new insights for you, just as they have for me. And I can't wait to explore more powerful ideas and stories in the future with you.